Welcome to the Flymen Fishing Show, where we talk fly fishing, fly tying, and everything in between. I'm your host, Scotty Davis.
How are you?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Oh my God. If I was any better, I couldn't stand it.
Oh, well, that's a good way to be.
Hey man, you're looking good.
Thanks, brother.
Still hard not to recognize you without that handlebar mustache from back in the day.
Yeah, I'm having trouble even growing a mustache at this point. I'm getting a little bit more coming in here, maybe down here. I could do a neck beard if I needed to, but up in here and here, and like I don't have any eyebrows hardly, so.
The legend of neckbeard.
That's right.
Well, you don't want to grow it all. Come in gray anyway. Mine is.
White.
Yeah. Well, sweet. How you been?
Been good. No complaints.
Yeah. That's a nice little pucket artwork there behind you.
Yeah, that's a 10-year-old pucket. That's a 2011 model. So
yeah.
Got in early, back when working folks like ourselves could afford that.
Yeah. I agree. How's the fishing? Picking up at all?
I went last week. Mark, one of the guys from our podcast, we went out, tried to do a little snooking, and definitely fish around. But I think we were probably at least the second or third boat that had been down that bank.
Yeah.
So everybody was pretty tight-lipped. And then as far as red fishing goes, kind of been a little bit slow just because, the lagoon's in such shitty conditions and they're hard to see. So it hadn't been the greatest, but, they're still out there if you're willing to put in the time.
Are you fishing in the river?
We fished in the river for the snook. We fished the lagoon for redfish. So
Still some in there?
Oh, yeah. And
yeah.
I've been fishing closer up towards New Smyrna, so it's kind of I'm having to develop that knack for knowing when to be somewhere based on a little bit of tide versus Gilway. There's not enough tide to even matter, so little learning curve thrown. So
okay. I guess you're spoiled growing up fishing the lagoon like that, having no tides.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I ever fished there was with you. God, I don't know how many moons ago that was, but I probably would have died trying to figure that place out without you.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, it's an awesome place. I see a lot of guys, when they're tricking out their skiffs, when they're first getting ready to start going over there, everybody's all, about getting their GPS and stuff like that. I'm like, you can throw that fucker in the water. Don't know how to get there, safely, like where there's actually water to get there. Because, you have to go way around your elbow to get to where you're going a lot of times. I still love it. It's not like it was when you and I fished it that first time, but it's still fighting to hang on.
Yeah, I know this is a dead horse that's been beaten to death lately, but it's got to be heard too. But what can you attribute to the major decline? And that's only been 20 years, 15 years, maybe?
Well, honestly, the tipping point, what I'll say was the touchstone event where it really went over the edge was back in 2010. We had one of those really fast moving, like major, like what do they call it? Alberta Clipper, where the temperature dropped in the matter of it wasn't like at sundown till sun up, it got cold. It was like in 2 hours, it got cold.
Yeah.
And it real cold. So what happened was there was a bunch of fish, big snook, big trout, even redfish that were up real skinny on the flats. And the temperature went down so fast, so quick, they couldn't get off the flats before they got lethargic and literally died. So in 2010, when we had that event go down, the lagoon has a load of nutrients in it, phosphate and nitrogen loading, that's been going on really since late 50s, early 60s. And it's been this gradual increase, coming from septic tanks leaching into the groundwater that makes it to the lagoon. You got fertilizer from lawns, you got road runoff, from stormwater. And so it was already kind of coming up, And then all of a sudden, you had the 2010 event happen, and you just had this massive biomass die. And when it rotted, it released all of the nitrogen and the phosphates and the stuff that it had sequestered in the fish themselves. And we went over the tipping point. So what happened was we had this brown algae that's always there. It's always kind of in background numbers. That following summer, we had our first brown tide. You hear people talking about red tide over on the West Coast. This is different. It's not like something that where you can smell it. What it does is it's this brown algae that when it blooms, it affects the water quality, the color of the water. And so that brown tide, the lagoon went like pea soup brown. And anything basically 2.5 to 3 feet and deeper, the grass could not get sunlight. So all of that grass died in the deeper portions where we had big grass meadows. Well, when all that grass died, what happened? Everything that had been previously sequestered in it, as far as nutrients that had been uptaken and sequestered, got released. So it just got even worse. So it's like the 1-2 punch, and then the knockout punch that we didn't even see coming. A lot of people didn't see coming. Is now that the grass was dead in the 2.5, 3 foot and deeper range, we had this wild herd of manatees that are not so wild anymore because of human, intervention. We have a couple of power plants that they're not really running anymore. The only purpose in them running anymore down in Titusville is the state mandates that they have to put out a certain amount of warm water during the winter. And so that those manatee, where we had previously had, say, a herd of 250 or 1,000 or whatever it was, I don't remember the correct number, but basically it was a 6-fold increase that had happened because they stopped migrating. They would only migrate as far as Titusville. They had a warm water refuge. They stayed around, and they like to fuck. So there's tons. So once the deep water grass was gone, it's like an old farmer will tell you, if you got a 10-acre pasture, you can only have 8 cows. You put 16 on there, it'll look good for a little while, but eventually you're going to have a big mud dirt lot, and you're going to have your cattle starving. So that's what happened. The manatees then ate all the grass, and that really came to roost this summer. And I think at last count, and this is terrible, there's been over 800 manatees have died in the state of Florida. The majority of those have been in Brevard and Volusia County, which is where the lagoon is, because that's where they've been staying because of those power plants creating this false environment that they liked to stay year round. And the majority of those manatee deaths have been attributed to starvation, because the grass got killed by the brown tide, and then the shallow water, you were seeing manatees doing stuff, crawling like backside of the water, back reaching up, eating mangroves off the banks, and they just ran out of a food source. So now, that was the touchstone over the edge, Larry Littrell's opinion of what happened. And what got us there is even worse. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, during the space race, Russia got Sputnik up, and we were like, oh shit, pull your pants up, boys. We got to beat them to the moon, right? So NASA was having problems with some of their engineers, not liking working conditions. And they basically kind of went on a work strike because of the conditions they were living in out on Cape Canaveral. They hated it. It's a bunch of German fellas. And they're like, they're living in this subtropical environment, and they were getting just smoked by salt marsh mosquitoes. So NASA said, hey, we got to fix for that. We'll do mosquito control. And that's when they built all the dikes and the impoundments all the way around Mosquito Lagoon, all the way around the north end of the Indian River. Anywhere that NASA owned property, they created the dikes. And what that did is it sequestered and turned off the salt marsh from the North Indian River Lagoon and Mosquito Lagoon. And now water can't go out across the salt marsh and let the salt marsh do what it naturally does, which is filter out all of those nutrients, uptake into the mangroves and all the other bushes and grasses that live out there, sequester all that bad stuff and filter. So our aquarium, Mosquito Lagoon, North Indian River Lagoon, our aquarium lost its filter, let's say in 1960. So since 1960, you get little drips, in an aquarium that big, you've got little drips of stuff coming in, and it's slowly building up. And everybody already knew we had problems with too much pollution and, runoff from lawn fertilizer happening. And then act of God, 2010, we go over the Niagara Falls, so to speak, and here we are 10 years later. And I've always tried to be really optimistic about what ultimately would happen after we had that go down. And the lower Laguna Madre is a very similar hydrology to Mosquito Lagoon, very similar estuary. It's microtidal. It doesn't really have a lot of freshwater sources coming into it. And they had a similar event with brown tide. It took about 10 years and it came back better than it was before. And so I'd always hung my hat on that. And I'd always tell people, nature has its own, timetable. But if we look at lower Laguna Madre, in 10 years, we should start seeing something happen to the good. I've kind of lost hope of that, because what Laguna Madre does not have is those stupid fucking dikes that prevent the filtration, the natural filtration. Until we restore the connection to the salt marsh, I think we're stuck in a really shitty loop for a while. So that's what it's going to take, in my opinion, is getting some of those dikes opened up and letting nature actually nurture the lagoon back to health.
Yeah. Are there talks of that, removing the lagoons, going back to it?
No, unfortunately.
It seems like a simple solution to us,
Dude, it's so frustrating because it does seem like a simple solution. However, you've got multiple layers of bureaucracy that you have to penetrate and then get them all on the same page, because NASA owns the property, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Park Service manage two different areas that comprise the totality of Mosquito Lagoon and the north end of the Indian River. You got Canaveral National Seashore on one side, you got Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge on the other. The refuge being bigger than the CNS, and then you've got Volusia County authorities, you've got Brevard County authorities, you've got the state of Florida Department of Environmental Protection, you've got the St. Johns River Water Management District, and all of them get to have a say in it. So typically when you start talking about why can't we just remove the dikes? If you know that something is broken and you know how it used to be, restoration at its very root term, restore it. If you restore it back to its original hydrology, you and I could do it. We could go to Sunbelt, rent a couple of excavators, and I'd be a real good excavator operator by the time I'm done. I don't know really a lot about doing that right now, but it'd be fun to do.
Yeah.
But, pick up and fill in the, and get it back to its normal height. And all of a sudden you're restoring it to the way it was. But here's NASA, number one, doesn't give a shit. It's not even in their wheelhouse. And if you bring it up to NASA says, well, Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge manages that for us. You go to Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge and they say, well, we understand your concern about the overall ecosystem, but we're managing this for migratory waterfowl. That was our charter from the Congress when we were formed. So they believe that the ducks and the shorebirds that migrate back and forth like these impoundment areas so much that they can't remove them because they would violate their own charter for having the refuge for the purpose of. I mean, it's mind blowing.
It is.
I mean, you're like, so you're willing to allow the entire ecosystem to collapse as long as the birds are happy.
Right.
I mean, you do know that as a result of the dikes being built originally, and while under the tutelage and the watch of the Fish and Wildlife Service, while it was a National Wildlife Refuge, we've already seen one bird species become extinct because direct correlation with the dikes. The dusky seaside sparrow, gone, no more, extinct, and it's because of the stupid dikes. You would think that would have been a wake-up call enough.
Yeah. Well, not that I don't love birds, but I mean, look at the millions of dollars that area brought in tax revenue for the state of Florida, and look at the $200 that the bird watchers brought in tax revenue. You know.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's crazy is there's a disconnect between like Ducks Unlimited, the local chapter of Ducks Unlimited. They will fight you tooth and nail here. You even breathe the idea of removing a dike or opening up a dike, and they go apeshit crazy. But if you go to DU National, you just go to their website and look at their coastal restoration efforts. They're actively removing dikes and opening up impoundments all up and down the eastern seaboard because they recognize that a healthy, natural estuary is better for waterfowl than any kind of man-made hokey bullshit that's left over from mosquito control. And the mosquito control folks are the first ones to tell you, we don't even do mosquito control that way anymore. Those dikes and impoundments are not necessary. So, you know, if we could get everybody in a room and, you know, give the local duck hunters, you know, something to chew on, maybe they would buy onto it. I don't know. I mean, we had a couple of storms ago, you know, hurricane tropical storms ago, Mother Nature busted open a couple of those dikes. It was awesome. You know, it got water flowing back in there again. And without any kind of permitting, without any kind of environmental impact studies or anything, the local DU chapter got the blessing from the refuge manager, and they went out there with bags of Quickcrete and like created a bag like patch, and were able to close back up that dike because that's their favorite duck hunting hole. So it's insane.
Well, I know I probably illegally busted a few beaver dams in my day, so it doesn't seem that far off.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've often talked about, you know, what would it really take? You know, you could go get a trash pump, throw it out there, and, you know, sit out and maybe a 12-pack, you know, case beers. Everybody sit out there and take turns just blowing a hole in the dike overnight. So
I don't think,
but I mean,
Titusville jail's big enough for all of us.
You know, if you could do that, the problem is there's so many individual impoundments. It would be, you know, there's no way to do it on a scale to open it up. But, you know, this is one of the most overlooked potential restoration projects in the entire United States, and certainly in the fly fishing world. You know, the movie that came out a few years back, Damnation, you know, that led to the removal of the dams for the steelhead and the potential salmon to return out in the Pacific Northwest. Kudos to those guys. There's like a groundswell now of removing old, unused, obsolete dams on freshwater rivers to allow people, you know, to fish to return to their home range. And it works. Down in South Florida, you know, they just completed getting rid of the old roadbed for the Tamiami Trail, which no matter what you want to do with the water coming out of Lake O, that's a great, you know, argument and a great cause about, you know, not sending it to Stewart or not sending it to Fort Myers. But you can't get it any further south, or you couldn't until you got rid of Tamiami, because all it was a raised roadbed with a bunch of culverts in it. So they just did complete that. So now you can get the flow going back through the Everglades. And we all recognize that all this stuff takes time, but just like you said earlier, man, this Mosquito Lagoon thing, it really does on the surface sound like a really easy fix. What has changed in the last 70 years, 60 years that led to this? Putting up the dikes. How could we change it? Return it back to its normal elevation and let nature heal itself. But the unfortunate thing is with DEP, with St. John's River Water Management, hell, with the refuge themselves, they like to study the shit out of everything. So it'd take 15, 20 years worth of studies because, scientists need to make money too. And eventually we might come to the conclusion that, God probably made it right the first time. Let's give God's plan a try again. And then we would have to figure out which plan that God used to get there. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's sad too. That's such a magical place. And like you said about God, I think it was Nietzsche, the philosopher, that said God is dead and we killed him.
Amen.
So we did that, and it's up to us to fix it. So
that's right.
That's nuts, man. You personally have done, since I've known you, you've done a bunch for that. With your earlier podcast, Fly Fishing After Dark, now with Taylor Trash, the casting competition, dinghy derby. Let's talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, man.
Let's talk about something happy.
I don't want to come across as being negative, man. I still love the fuck out of the lagoon, and I'll die fishing the lagoon. This is my home waters. And I care about it because I've seen it when it was that pristine, that amazing place. I mean, fuck, it was a destination fishery.
Absolutely.
Not anymore. Or if somebody tries to tell you that it is, they're lying to you. It's unfortunately lost that luster. If you want to come grind it out and pretend you're permit fishing for redfish, get really frustrated and pissed off, come on down. It's ideal for you. But I mean, the dinghy derby actually, we came up with that idea. Taylor Trash, Fly Fishing. We were trying to come up with an idea to have a fundraiser for Marine Discovery Center here in New Smyrna Beach, because they actually have a lot of restoration programs, whether it's education in elementary and middle school, where those elementary age kids and middle school kids are actually tending to and growing in the classroom mangroves up until they're like to a pretty big size. And then they bring them over to Marine Discovery Center, and the Marine Discovery Center has like college folks that are doing studies and stuff out in the lagoon that need that as part of their shoreline restoration work. And that goes out there. They do oyster reef restoration. They've got this awesome program called Shuck and Share, where they literally, Marine Discovery Center has a pickup truck that drives throughout Central Florida, picking up oyster shells for people having oysters at the restaurant. Awesome. They come out here, get processed the correct way, and then they're used to correctly make the marine, the mats and the different things. There's 2 or 3 different ways that they're doing it now. So, we're trying to find out, we're trying to think of how can we help, an organization that really has boots on the ground, gets their hands dirty and supports. They cast a really wide net, whether it's University of North Florida, University of South Florida, UCF over in Orlando. There's a lot of those marine science programs that do their research and their stuff over here, and that's who they really support. So I went and I talked to the executive director and said, hey, we're just this little tiny podcast. We record in a double wide trailer, but we're lucky enough to have a lot of other passionate people that listen to us. And fly fishermen on the whole really get it when it comes to loving the environment, taking care of the environment, and giving back to what makes us so happy. We want to try to do this fundraiser for Marine Discovery Center but I only want to do it if I can get a commitment from you. And he said, what's that commitment? I don't know if I can commit to anything until you tell me. I said, the money that we donate to you cannot go to your general fund. It has to go specifically to your restoration and education programming budget. He's like, done deal. So I'm like, all right, cool, we're in. So I wanted to do something that was fun, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. And, everybody's like, oh, we need to do a tournament. I was like, well, number one, the tournament would suck because the conditions kind of suck. I don't want to be hypocritical and be putting that much pressure on the resource, by having this big, to do that's all about, yanking as many fish out as we can. So we came up with the dinghy derby and poker run. And basically it's the same number of guys that would have normally been out there, except none of them are fishing that day. And all we do is we run around 5 different locations, 5 different spots, check in, get a chip. At the end of the day, the chips have a certain value that nobody knows until at the end we say, okay, here's the value. And one person gets half of the registration pot. The other half goes to Marine Discovery Center. And then on top of that, we of course have a raffle. And, the first year we did it, we raised just a hair over $5,000. Last year, even with COVID going on, we raised a little over $12,000.
Awesome.
And so October 1st and 2nd, we're doing the thingy before the dinghy, which is basically a big happy hour. We're going to have barbecue served. We're going to do the raffle, just have a good time. Everybody's going to have a good time and hang out. Just like, kind of the quasi captain's meeting. We're calling it the thingy before the dinghy. And it's just a fundraiser. And then Saturday on the water will be the actual dinghy derby where everybody runs around, and it ends, imagine this, on a sandbar. It's just a big sandbar party, but it all goes to benefit a good cause. And then, just something that we've always wanted to do, whether it was with the Flyberry project that we got started, have a fly, leave a fly, need a fly, take a fly. You hope that people start crossing paths at these silly locations, and, you make a new friend or you find a new pattern, and it creates, more people knowing each other in fly fishing and creating a community. And it really has in that regard. We came up with the idea, how many people, talk about to get better at fly fishing, you need to practice or you need to be going more often. So we came up with the idea of the Taylor Park Casting Championships. And really it was just an excuse to try to get a bunch of guys together where we blended a golf style 9-hole shotgun tournament with casting very loosely competition. And again, everybody pays a few bucks to get in it. At the end, first, second, and third get some money back. Some beer gets drunk. People get to have fun. And man, we've had tons of new guys. Every time we do it, we have like at least 2 or 3 new people that are like, so-and-so told me about this. Like they didn't even know about it from, following us on, Instagram or anything like that. It's just been word of mouth. So here locally in New Smyrna, man, we're starting to see a whole lot more people, a lot more cohesive unit in the fly fishing community, which is honestly something I've always been jealous of you guys up in Charleston. You guys have that. I don't know whether it's because it's the flood tide brings everybody together at the same time, but like down here over the last 20 years that I've fished, there's little cliques here and there, but it's not like this big community. But we're starting to build that community here through the podcast and doing these goofy events. So, we're just trying to have fun.
Heck yeah. How long when did the Flyberry project start?
It's been around about 3 years old now. I'd have to look. It was like a spring thing when we originally came up with it officially and created an Instagram account. Yeah. Then Tyler down at Castaway Customs said, "Bro, I'll make the little Flyberry patches," and as soon as we did that, dude, it just went wild. Yeah. There's more people following the Flyberry on Instagram than our shitty little podcast. But I would even venture to say that probably a majority of the people that do the Flyberry project or have seen a Flyberry project have no idea that it's a Taylor trash fly fishing thing, because let's be honest, Taylor trash ain't for everyone.
It's for most of us.
I hope so, man.
I love it.
I always ask, what's the deal with your podcast? How would you describe it? And I'm like, it's basically what's talked about in the fly shop when, nobody's around that you don't know. It's what you talk about on the skiff with your buddies. It's just, unfiltered. It's honest. Just it's what we do. We just happen to be sitting around a table, and we're doing it because it gets us together. We cook dinner. We have a big dinner together, and then we hang out and shoot the shit. Happen to press record, and a few people around the country like to join in and gets them through their day, whether they're sitting at a freaking cubicle or they're on top. I mean, there's guys up in Charleston, a couple of guys that do HVAC work out at the port there. We get pictures all the time. They're up on top of those huge cranes that are loading shit. I'm like, this is insane. This is like awesome.
Yeah. That Flyberry patch. I don't know a boat ramp in Charleston that doesn't have one of those. So
yeah. And tell me if I personally have been places and seen them and gone and like checked out the flies. I'm like, damn, people are doing some quality shit.
Yeah. Most of them are hand tied, it's you're not getting like clousers, and like you said, there's no crap on them generally. It's something pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. So, that's what we've been doing in a nutshell. And I think what we've got a little over 6 weeks or so, and the Derby's here, and we got a couple other crazy ideas up our sleeve for other stuff, Taylor trash related, just to keep building the community.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's definitely seems to be growing. That new sunglass company just moved to New Smyrna, so that brought some more misfits with it.
Yeah, what's weird though is we haven't heard a word from those guys. One of the guys on the show reached out and tried to establish a little bit of contact with one of their ambassadors and was basically brushed aside. And I was like, man, we're like the local, we can help get the word out at least.
Yeah, they'll come around.
I mean, I know they're busy. They're launching their business and they're thinking big view. But man, come on. Say hi to the hometown fellers at least.
Yeah, you start where you sleep.
That's right. So tell me a little bit about this panga that you got with the Where did
well, I had sold the skiff and was kind of skiff shopping, and just as the price of skiffs went through the roof. I've gone through the roof. I bought that for 20 grand, and now the same boat will cost me 45. So I was just kind of looking at different boats, and I got the family with 2 kids now. So I was like, I'm gonna look at pangas, because you can do almost anything in a panga. Yeah. So got on I don't know, website, and like the third one I saw had that cabin on it, and just my mind just started ticking. I have paddle boards, I have kayaks, I do like to get out of the sun, and it's rad, dude. It was an old, I think he was 84 years old, retired Coast Guard captain, but he was also a carpenter. So he bought the hull and then moved that up from Florida and put the center console and the motor in North Carolina, and then took it to Virginia and built the whole cabin himself.
Okay.
So it's all like mahogany and brass. It's really kind of out of my, it's out of my wheelhouse, but I got a super deal on it, and the kids absolutely love it. And hell, I sit in there and have a couple cocktails when the family gets me down. I just go sit in the boat, and they can't see you, like you're sitting in the skiff like some weirdo. Like, what is he doing? So I'm kind of hiding in that little cabin a little bit. But it drafts maybe, I would say realistically, probably the way I got it loaded, probably 11 or 12 inches. I've never poled it, but I've gotten off in wading flats and just kind of drag it around with me. But we've been pretty far offshore in it too. So it's definitely a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. Well, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like dreamy to me, because it's almost like that mothership-ish feeling to it, where like it's like you say, it's a Swiss Army knife. It's like kind of a pretty do it all. I mean, no skiff's perfect,
right?
But having a house, I was like, damn, brother, I'm a little jealous, man. That's a pretty sick ride.
It's like that old saying, it does everything good, but nothing great.
That's right.
So where my old boat did one thing great and everything else really, really bad. So it's a good change. Are you still in your old whip? You still got that boat?
Yeah, I still got the whip ray. In addition to the fleet, ended up the Drake brothers ended up with a old Hobie power skiff.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's an 86. That they got it because they wanted the motor off of it. And it was funny. It was originally a Florida boat, and then it got bought by somebody in North Carolina. Lived up in North Carolina, like outside of Boone, and then the Drakes got it. And once they got the motor off of it, it just kind of sat out there for a couple of years. And I used to always ask Wilds, what's going on with that boat? What's going on with that boat? Because, my kid is now 15, started sophomore year. So I kind of wanted to get something to ease him into the water. So ultimately, after it sat for a couple of years, they realized they weren't going to do anything with it. I ended up getting it. So I have a new to me Hobie power skiff, and we set it up with tiller, cooler cradle, stand up, bar, and it's actually getting sea decked later this week. It's a really bitchin' little ride, man.
Isn't that what Bridger had? Didn't he have
Yeah.
Blue was a Hobie, right?
Yeah. Blue's, it's the exact same hull. He just had a center console, and this is just set up with a tiller. Open cockpit, open floor, 30 horse Tohatsu on the back of it. It screams. It's awesome.
That is perfect.
And it floats super, super skinny. Like, I didn't measure it skinny, but really it's 100% for my kid to get comfortable and learn his way on the water and, get him to the sandbar. And, who doesn't, if he can't get a girlfriend with his own skiff and a down, we got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
So trying to set for success. And it's been a fun project because when I got it, it was so oxidized. None of us knew what color it was. And once we started bumping through it, it's like Carolina blue. It's
cool.
really, yeah.
Did he do the work with you?
A little bit.
That's all you could ask for, really.
Yeah, he's at the skate park a whole lot. So, but
that's hard.
We'll see. Get him hooked on a little bit more diversity in what he does. And, I kept explaining to him, and I was without a truck for most of the summer. The old F-250, apparently Ford transmissions are only good for about 360,000 miles. So there's that.
It's about twice as much as a Chevy, though.
So, the intention was to try to get him on the water a whole lot this summer, but, with that and other things going on in my life, I didn't get him out as much as I wanted to. But as soon as we get it decked out later this week, it's pretty much finished. And like I told him, camping season's coming up. So he and his buddies have big plans to use it to go out to the islands on the lagoon and do a lot of weekend camping and who knows what, staying out of trouble, I hope.
Yeah. Well, you gave him a boat, so it's kind of your fault. You know what happens when you're 15. We were there. The restaurants in the lagoon, are they still doing good, or have they taken a big hit?
Actually doing surprisingly well. I would say that probably the biggest problem any of our local restaurants, especially the restaurants on the water, are having is staffing issues. It's not issues of, having customers. It's not a lot of people are willing to work right now. So when you go to, whether it's JB's or over, on our side of the river, down in Oak Hill, and go to Goodrich or anywhere on the water, and put yourself on island time, because these people are being worked hard. They're understaffed and they're doing the best they can, So yeah, it's cranking. We just ate dinner at JB's the other night, and I want to say it was like a Wednesday. And we were like, oh, this should be easy. Fucking 40-minute wait. All right, cool. I'm happy for him. You know, we just didn't expect it to be that busy in the middle of the week, but it is.
Nice. I think Goodrich's Seafood, I love that place. It's just old Florida. It just reminds me of old Florida.
It 100% is.
And it was the first and only, and last time I ate fried mullet, and that was with you.
That's right.
Telling me it's a delicacy. Ugh, God, it's horrible.
But you're able to say that you've had it now.
I have had it.
You know, I never worked up the courage. I don't even think they're doing breakfast right now, but they used to do breakfast. And for breakfast, you could get mullet roe with your breakfast fried. I never could bring myself to try that delicacy.
It's probably better than mullet. It's like shad. I like shad roe, but I don't think I would eat a shad, you know?
Right.
But even that, once a year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, this is for good luck, one time only. Maybe I'll choke it down.
So how was trout fishing? I saw you just went to Tennessee.
Yeah, I was up in Tennessee. It'd been probably, you know, with everything going on over the last year with me, I had not been up there in a while. So got up there, had to do some chores around the house, got everything situated and squared away. And Greg was kind enough to meet up with me. And the TVA is they've got a new turbine that they put in on the South Holston Dam. And I guess because it's newer, it's nicer or whatever, the minimum flow that they can get away with is a whole lot lower because it's a more efficient turbine. So they're not pushing as much water during the summer as they have historically, but they are running like a 3-hour, 4-hour pulse. And Greg has an old John boat with a jet drive on it. And I did a story, I think, trying to describe, because where we were fishing, when they release water at the dam, it takes about 3 hours later before the water gets to where we were going to be on the river. So it allowed us to keep maker's hours and plan on like a 9 a.m. start. So we get there, the water's up and running. So we ease out and we run upstream till we're starting to find where the water's already starting to fall out. And then we floated that, and then we ran up a second time. So we got 2 floats in, and the whole drift boat parade got their 1 drift. They were there at 6 a.m., you know, and floated it from the dam down to wherever they were taken out. But we were throwing streamers 100%. And I think I put 2 fish in the boat, had a couple come unbuttoned and moved a few. Not bad for a middle of the day, you know, bright sunshiny day throwing streamers. Yeah. I wasn't gonna stare at a bobber all day. I knew that.
Yeah, that's a fun river.
Yeah, it's really a neat river. It really is.
Were any hatches? You see the sulfur hatch, or it might be too hot for
we were hoping to see a sulfur hatch, but we didn't see it. Like, we were keeping our eye out on the way up, see if the water coming up had kicked off a hatch. We didn't see any risers anywhere, so we were just like, you know what, tie on the meat and just do a little casting and stripping.
Nice. How long were you up there?
I was up there. I actually flew in through Asheville because I was picking up a new to me vehicle. I bought a Jeep and picked up the Jeep in Asheville. So I was there. I think I flew in Friday, went home Thursday. So just about a week, up there about a week. Long enough to go to the barbecue joint twice, eat at Pal's a couple of times, and catch up with some friends. So yeah, it was a good little short trip. Plan on spending a good amount of time up there this fall, though.
Yeah. You keep a boat up there, or you just?
I do have a boat up there. It's not in running condition currently, but we got to get it serviced and ready to go. It's a boat my dad had up there, and since he passed years back, it's just been sitting. But it'll be a real good boat for doing stuff on the lake. And I got too many friends with drift boats up there for me to buy a drift boat just to park it up there. So
definitely one of those places you need a boat. Such a big river. The first time I fished there, it's probably as green as they come, and just, I've heard of that place, I want to go fish it. And I got trapped on the wrong side of the river when they raised the water. and I had to walk up a hill. Luckily, I found a road, and somebody gave me a ride back, and it was probably a 25-minute car ride to get back to the other side of the river, and I could not have crossed it.
No. When they full on rip the water down through there, you better get out.
It's scary.
Yeah, I mean,
Sirens.
Oh yeah, and not only is it swift, it comes up like 4 to 5 feet in elevation. It's pretty crazy.
That's nuts. Any plans to come up this way?
Dying to come up this way to see you guys. Probably thinking if I can pull it off. IFTD this year is just really messing up my October.
Mine too.
Because it's like we've got the dinghy derby on the 1st and the 2nd, and then there's kind of like a little bit of breathing room, but then you got IFTD is in the middle of the week, and if I hustle home, well, the flood tide and the whole event that Paul's having with Paylor's Ball is right there at the end of the IFTD week. So I'm almost feeling like I got to make a decision. Do I go to Salt Lake City, walk around and see the same old stuff? Or do I just blow that off until that's all settled and then just go to Charleston? I think we're leaning towards coming to Charleston.
You probably do both. Like you said, you can, unless you have to be there, you can see most of the IFTD stuff in a day and a half. People kind of draw you in for a little longer, but.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm willing to do a 5-hour flight, all the way up to Salt Lake City for a day or two. So I'd rather do a 5-hour drive up to Charleston and spend it barbecue shop, hopping, taco hopping, and fishing. So that's probably going to be my excuse why I don't make IFTD this year. But you guys are supposed to be having flood tides this weekend, yeah?
Yeah, it's supposed to be all week. Today has been booming thunder all day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. It's been raining pretty hard and off and on.
You guys getting stuff from Fred kind of
I don't know if it's yet, but we will get it.
Okay.
But it's just been like rattling the windows bad. And I got my little mountain cur dog, and she does not like the thunder. So
oh no.
She's glued on the far wall. You got a new dog, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Our Labrador Retriever, the Yellow Lab, Cabo, unexpectedly passed away last fall, and it makes for a really empty house, man. You don't realize how big of a place they occupy, not only in your heart but in the house.
Right.
And we almost immediately got in touch with the breeder that we'd gotten him from, and got on the list, and we were like, do we get another yellow? We decided against doing that because we felt like we'd spend the rest of our life explaining that's not Cabo.
Right.
And so we got a chocolate, and let me tell you what an ape shit nuts puppy this guy is. Holy crap. Tiller's his name. He is about a week shy of being 7 months old, and he is 77 pounds already. Not fat at all, just dense, 100% English chocolate lab, big, and his paws still look huge, which scares me.
It's like turning loose a coked up orangutan in your house, gonna wreck everything.
Dude, when he gets going, the way I think of the orangutan, but I always say it's like wrestling a bear. Full on, you're wrestling a bear. He is so freaking strong. It's crazy. He loves the water, of course. We have had him out on the boat a few times, and he loves it. So yeah, we totally in love with that cat. He's bad to the bone, great personality, but we're just hoping he'll dial it down just a little bit in the end.
I've always heard
that adult lab like demeanor is going to be very welcomed when it shows up.
I've always heard the chocolate ones were wired a little different.
Nobody told us at first. I mean, we should talk to a few people.
Yeah.
Fishing wise, I'm going to go not next week, but the week after. Headed down to the Keys do about 5-day trip down there for some bonefish down the lower keys. Might see if we see a permit or something. Something I've never even, really targeted.
That's the best way to do it.
Well, I've done a permit trip once with a buddy of mine that's a guide down in Key West. And for the same reason I don't like tarpon fishing in the Keys for the big fish, unless of course it's going off, is the waiting around. It's the waiting, the searching, the hunting, the waiting, and not seeing anything. And then finally, okay, here's your one shot or your third shot of the day. Like bonefish, I feel like is a whole lot more rewarding. Maybe it's my short attention span. And I'm sure it's cool as shit to catch your first permit. There's sons of bitches and all that. But like, I just love bonefish because bonefish are like, dumbass, happy-go-lucky, kind of like me, easily fooled. It's like, what was that? Why? Let me go. Fuck it, I'll eat it. Try it once, and like bonefish, if you get it near them without being a clown doing it, they'll pretty much come over and like play a little tug of war with you. So I'm looking forward to doing some bone fishing.
Yeah, it's good to feel rewarded.
Yeah, it really is. You don't have to be, the apex caster angler with, that's on the front of the permit skiff. I'll be the blue collar bush latte guy chasing bonefish. Take that in a week.
C's get degrees.
Amen.
Well, awesome, dude. I can't wait to see you when you come up. So just give me some heads up. And I'm going to try to show up for that dinghy derby. That sounds like my kind of party.
Would love to be down for that. Yeah.
October 1st and 2nd.
October 1st and 2nd. Yep.
Sweet. We'll put links up too of all at the end of this, so everybody can.
Awesome. We would absolutely appreciate that.
Guaranteed good time.
All right, brother.
Yes, sir.
Man.
You too, man. We should do it more often.
Yeah, amen. I mean, we're not that far apart. We should be seeing each other more often.
Meet in Savannah.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks.
See you, bud.
See you, man.